The NFL is back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving all new players a can't-miss offer for Week 1. Bet just $1 on any NFL game during the first week of the season and receive $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. Take advantage of this limited time offer now. You heard that right. DraftKings is giving all new players $200 in free bets instantly when you place a bet of $1 or more on any Week 1 game. Head over to DraftKings Sportsbook app now to check out all the great promotions and daily odds boost. Plus, you can make every game a big game with same game parlays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN to receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any Week 1 game. That's promo code THPN to get your free $200 in free bets instantly for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Remember, you must be 21 or older and live in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Have a gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or if you're in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
Shoots it deflected right in. Peter Angelo save rebound. Stastny stopped by Peter Angelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Peter Angelo just made on him as Frankie sparkling on that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. Should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Tendy Talk, presented by the BLPA and the Hockey Podcast Networks. I'm your host Joe, better known as Washed Up Goalie on social media. This week I chat with Jeff Osborn of the Chicago Hockey Rinkcast and now the Kraken Hostile Seattle Hockey Rinkcast and of course the-rink.com. It was fun talking to Jeff since we came from the same part of the Chicagoland area and have played at many of the same rinks. So, without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Jeff. So, Jeff, thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Always fun to talk to another goalie, but also a little more fun when I'm talking to somebody from the old neighborhood, essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for having me on. It's nice to kind of get away sometimes from just like covering NHL teams.
Yeah.
And talking about NHL teams and just actually talking about like
the
life or the game of playing goalie, beer league goalie even. So I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah. So I know in some of the back and forth as we were talking, when you got your start in hockey, it wasn't at the, as I like to call it, the giant snowflake in the sky down at SIA. You started, playing, street hockey over there. What is that, off of 115th across from the cemetery? It was across from the cemetery.
Yeah.
How did you get into hockey in the first place?
Well, I didn't grow up playing sports at a young age. My parents didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know, because they weren't really athletic. So they really didn't know what to do with the boys. Like they just kind of followed the lead of everyone else in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of my other friends started playing baseball and football and all this other stuff. And I was a little shy as a kid. So like, I didn't say, hey, I want to do this. I just kind of, we played in the neighborhood. The kids would play, we would play street hockey because all my friends played at this league. It's called Southwest, or back then it was called Boys Field Hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's called Southwest Ball Hockey. And a couple of my friends, actually, one of my friends, his father was the founder of the league back in, I'm going to say, 1971, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other founders of the league are like the chief of police in Chicago Ridge. His name is Rob Pizarski. His dad was one of the other founders. And then what they did is they were looking for something for the kids to do that didn't cost a lot of money, and the kids wanted to play hockey. So what they would do is they would set up a rink, and they'd have to take it down every night over on like 107th and right over by the fire station there in Chicago Ridge. And I'm talking about Chicago Ridge, Illinois, for anyone who doesn't know. It's a southwest suburb of Chicago. And so they would set up these boards that were only knee high there for the kids, and they would play games, and they would take them down at the tennis court every night. And then they moved from there. I think they moved over to where the Worth, Illinois pool was, the Worth pool on 107th Street, which is right where I grew up. I grew up like pretty much right across the street from there.
Okay.
And they moved the rink over to there, and they would take the boards up and down every day. And eventually it moved on to, they actually created real boards and kind of a real hockey, hockey rink, outdoor hockey rink over there on 115th. It's between Central and Ridgeland on the south side of the cemetery, right off of 294 there. And what they would do is every winter they would go there. All the parents would show up. They'd put the rink up, and then when the spring came, because they were tennis courts, they would have to take them down in the fall. And so anyway, long story short, my friends played there. They started there, and so they liked playing hockey so much, and they were really, some of my friends were really good at it. So instead of you would see, the neighborhood baseball players, they play baseball out in the street, or football, or they would play, whatever out in the street. Our main sport was hockey. Yeah. And we played it year round, right out in front of my house.
Wayne's World sure helped in our time growing up, where game off, game on. It seemed like that drew everybody out to the street with the stick.
Yeah, it's very familiar to what I grew up with, because it was kind of the same thing. Now, granted, I'm a little older, so like when Wayne's World came out, I had already been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
But it was very much the same thing of that. And I would play with my friends, and we would play all day long. And just like during the summer, it wasn't baseball. I mean, we'd play a little bit of baseball here and there, but it was almost all hockey. Yeah. And my dad had made nets. It was in front of my house. I lived on a dead end street, so we didn't have to worry about cars very much. And we would just do that all day long. We would get these little inflatable, they were like little balls. They were probably, I don't know, 6-7 inches. And you get them from the Ben Franklin down the street. And we would go there, and you'd put them in the dryer. And when you put them in the dryer, they would shrink to about the size of what a ball is now that they play hockey with, the Milek balls.
Yeah.
And that's what we would play with out in the street, because none of us really had helmets and masks, anything. So you play with that softball. Yeah, it'll leave a little bit of a welt.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna, it's not gonna take an out or anything.
It's funny you say that. When I was in high school, we were playing roller hockey at one of the tennis courts, and I had braces, but they were already off, and I had a retainer glued to the back of my teeth on the bottom. And I'm skating in front of the net, and one of my teammates takes a slap shot, and it hits me square in the mouth, pops the retainer out. Luckily, I had an orthodontist appointment the next day, because they were going to take the darn thing out. And the orthodontist looks at me and goes, "Well, it didn't do any damage." He goes, "It was coming out anyway today. You just chose the more painful route," because I had a big old fat lip. I tried smiling, like this side of my lip was probably dead for like a month. So when I tried smiling, it was just like, no, it's just big old bubble. And he's like, "Yeah, you definitely went the harder route getting that thing out. But yeah, you maybe wore shin pads, if that, because you got tired of people hacking at your feet going for the ball. But other than that, there were no pads or helmets or anything."
Yeah. I got lucky because my old man, he was a flea market rat, and not the flea markets, not like the Swap-A-Rama flea markets you see now, like a real flea market at a drive-in theater. And some people aren't going to know what those are either, but my dad used to go to those every weekend religiously, and he would find these people who would get, they would have hockey gear in their basement or whatever. Yeah. And they wouldn't know what it was worth. They'd throw it out on the table, and my dad would walk up. He'd be like, "Hey, I'll give you $5 for that." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, $5, boom." Rather leaves than they have to take it home. And he ended up buying like goalie equipment hockey goal equipment I ended up getting. It was old, like
Yeah.
from the 70s. And I was playing in the 80s. So it was 10 years old or something like that, but it was still goalie equipment.
Right.
The bad part about it was handed.
Yeah.
So I taught myself to play goalie left-handed
Oh, no.
after I'd been, and this was at probably 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I switched so I can catch with both hands. Because when I play baseball, I catch with one hand.
Yeah.
When I play hockey, I catch with the other hand.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's almost easier for a goalie to do that because, you can normally naturally catch with both hands. And that's a whole nother discussion. I know Mike McKenna goes off on it of, should your young goalie be right-handed or left-handed, and based off of that. And it's like, well, everybody usually goes off of what do I catch with for baseball? And that's why most of us catch with our left hand for hockey. But, his argument is it should be, when you grab a stick to skate out, which way do you shoot? Because that should dictate which hand you catch with as a goalie. So for me, I should be a full right goalie catching with, the other hand so that I can play the puck better. But these days, it doesn't really matter. I'm not good at playing the puck. Never have been.
See, now me on the other hand, I'm a goalie, and anyone that plays on my team will tell you I play the puck a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I will be the goalie that on the power play, I come out and I give out stretch passes to the blue line.
Yeah.
As the team's trying to get off the ice, for a change on the PK, I'm trying to get a rush going back the other end. But that was because I played out, in ball hockey. I was a defenseman. I was a forward for all that time, and I'm comfortable shooting right-handed, even though I'm a full right goalie. So the mechanics all works out really. I'm very comfortable shooting, passing, playing it that way.
And that was tough for me because I was a right-handed shot, and now I got to learn how to, play the puck left-handed. And so
I don't know if I could do it.
It's an argument that Mike McKenna makes that makes complete sense to me, because one of my teammates in college, he was a left-handed shot, and so he just, for him, when he came out to play the puck, it was just natural to him, where for me it was not natural, and I was just learning the Turco grip at that time. So you're playing ball hockey. What drew you to the net?
I was the only one in the neighborhood who was dumb enough to do it. Really. I mean, growing up, whenever I looked at sports, I always liked the position that had the cool gear.
Mm-hmm.
So when I played baseball, I wanted to be a catcher.
Same.
Even though I was the fastest kid on the team by a long shot, I wanted to play catcher. I wanted to be behind the plate because they had the cool equipment.
Yep.
Goalies, it was the same thing. It was just naturally, the pads. You could have different color pads. And back then, it was white or it was tan. And that was it.
Yeah.
But you could have the cool gear, the helmets, and the the gloves and the blockers and all that stuff was really cool to me. And that's what kind of drew me to playing net. On top of, I was the guy in the neighborhood who would actually volunteer to do it.
Yeah.
Rather than being stuck in net.
Yeah. That was always the nice thing about being a goalie when you were playing street hockey is you didn't have to rotate out with anybody. If anything, it was, all right, who wants to play on the other end now? We got one goalie. Let's find a second one. So when did you make it on the ice and learn how to skate?
Well, I knew, playing ball hockey is, I'm very much an advocate of the ball hockey, especially at a young age for the kids, because of the fact that they don't have to worry about skating. They can go out there and they learn the rules, learn the position. And that's exactly what I do with my son. I put him in the ball hockey while he did learn to skate. So he could learn the position. He knew where all the positions were. He tried every one of them, all that stuff before he ever played a game in ice. So he was well ahead of everybody when it came to it, eventually him playing ice. But anyway, I knew eventually, being a hockey player, you watch these guys on ice, you want to play on ice. You want to be like them. You want to play on ice. So roughly 10, 11, I talked my parents and let me get skates. And I said, I want to learn how to ice skate. And, it was a slow process, and we would muck around on there was a pond behind in an industrial area over about on Southwest Highway in the one end of Chicago Ridge. It was a big industrial park over there, and they had a lot of ponds back there, and no one ever really bothered you if you went back there. So we would go over there, throw the skates on, and I actually have a picture. I was just showing my son the other day of me on that pond with all my friends. And it's one of the most hilarious things. One of those like 80s kid hockey pictures I've ever seen.
That's great. So you start skating, you've got this passion for the game. When did you start playing organized ice hockey?
Well, we had a group in the neighborhood that were the older people that played in the ball hockey league, and they started playing ice hockey as they grew up too. And they were probably a good at least 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And but they snuck me on the team. They needed a goalie. I started playing at 15 in the men's league, in the lowest men's league at SIA, the aforementioned SIA, with those guys. And I had played, over the Saint Spectrum, if you remember that place.
Oh, God,
that old dive.
Yeah, we can exchange stories about that place and the smell of those locker rooms.
Yeah. Well, back when we were that age, I used to spend the night at my friend's house. We would go out, but we would go out because they would rent the rink out at like 12:30 at night at St. Spectrum.
Yeah.
So I had tried it a little bit on the ice, but I didn't play an actual game on the ice till I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And that was at SIA. And I have video somewhere of that game. And I think we lost 12-1.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that men's league, because I got into a game or two in that men's league around 15, 16, where they needed a goalie, and I knew the guys, a couple of the guys had already graduated from Brother Rice, and they had a men's league team, and they're like, yep, we need you this week. Can you play for us? I was like, yeah, absolutely I can. Well, they know it. I'm too young, and they're like, they won't care as long as there's a goalie.
Yeah, that's pretty much what ended up happening.
Yeah.
Like I said, and then the worst part about it is, my high school didn't have a hockey team. I went to Richards.
Yep.
And they didn't have a hockey team. So, that was another reason why it was hard to get into hockey. But on the backside of that, I played football at Richards, and I played varsity football there and stuff. I couldn't let the coaches know that I was playing men's league hockey on Sunday nights and coming to play football Monday morning, because they would have strangled me, that I could have broke a leg or broke an ankle or whatever, but I did it anyway.
Yeah. I laughed when you mentioned Saint Spectrum. I still remember everybody was, enamored that they had this Zamboni that looked like a car. It's like, well, it's not a Zamboni, it's an Olympia, a less superior product. But I don't know if he was there when you were going there, but Jose, he was their Olympia driver. And
I don't even remember any of the names of any of the people there.
Jose was amazing because he barely spoke a word of English. And even though most of us were taking Spanish in high school, we could barely speak a lick of Spanish. But somehow we found a way to always communicate. And, we found a way to get our points across to each other. And even though that rink was a dump, it had its own smell, it had its leaks and everything else, he found a way to keep that ice in as best condition as he could do. And I'll always remember Jose for one reason. And one of my favorite high school hockey stories is from that rink. We're playing Lions Township freshman year JV state playoffs, first round, and the refs were not very good that day, and my coach was throwing some words their way, and so he got thrown out. And my coach was also getting his doctorate in psychology at that point in time, and we're at a Catholic school, so some might say the coach shouldn't be dropping F-bombs very loudly at the officials. So he gets thrown out of the game, and there's that stairway to nowhere on the bench side. He just stomps up the stairs, and you just hear the thump, thump, thump as he's stomping up the stairs, and he sits down and just kind of like pouts the rest of the game. And we wound up losing the game. It was like a 2-1 loss, a heartbreaker. And he comes in the locker room afterwards. He goes, "Now, if any of your parents ask," because I'm going to guess it was a little muffled on their side, "I asked the ref, what were you freaking looking at? Not what they thought they heard." And we're like, "Okay, Paul."
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So you kind of have a neat, non-traditional way of getting where we all wind up, and that's the beer league. Because I think most of us, at least these days now, because it's getting harder and harder to find enough kids to play street hockey, yet alone in an organized league for ball hockey. So I think that's pretty cool. But when did you kind of start playing beer league full time on a regular basis?
It wasn't too far after that because I never really stopped.
Yeah.
We would go year round if we could.
Mhm.
But what I actually took another left turn when I got to be about 19. It was getting harder because the old team that we had kind of fell apart.
Mhm.
Not as many people were around, people move away, the whole thing. Well, it was just getting hard to find teams to play on and stuff.
Yeah.
And because
And
I wasn't that good.
those SIA men's league times weren't very friendly either.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing is we started looking in, and because we had done this in my neighborhood, we started playing roller hockey.
Mhm.
And this is the first set of rollerblades that came out. They weigh 4,000 pounds,
Yeah.
but we strapped them to our feet and we would play in the neighborhood, and we tore them all up because it was on asphalt. And but it was fun. But so we knew it was something. We were like, if we could find a place where they have roller hockey, that would be really cool. And we found a place when I was about 19 or 20 in Chicago Heights. It was called Rollerblaze.
Yep. I remember hearing of them.
Yeah. And so we had enough friends then that wanted to get into the roller hockey because it was cheaper. You didn't have to have as many people on the team, like the whole ordeal. It's half the price, half the amount of people out there because it's 4-on-4. And so we put a team together of 8 players, 9 players, and me. And I started playing roller hockey almost exclusively for about 20 years.
Oh, wow. So you're playing roller hockey for 20 years. What brought you back to the ice?
Well, I mean, I always wanted to get back on the ice. I just once you get into one place and you're kind of ingrained in there, and you're the goalie, and everyone's calling you to play for them, and you're playing on 5 different teams. It's just hard to get in somewhere else.
Yep.
And I had moved around a couple times, so there wasn't really a local ice rink until I moved where I moved 12 years ago, which I just moved away from in Plainfield. The Canlan Ice Rink is right there on 55, and I lived a quarter of a mile from the front door.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the, I slowed down playing roller hockey and stuff, and one of the guys who I played on the roller hockey team, and they closed the roller hockey rink in Homer Glen where we were playing. So they were thinking of other things to do. And one of the guys that I used to play for said, "Hey, we're going to be putting an ice hockey rink or ice hockey team together. Would you play?" And I'm like, "Well, geez, I haven't played in 20 years. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be any good, but like, I'll come out and try. Where are you guys playing?" And he's like, "Canlan." I'm like, "Canlan? Yeah, of course I'll play there. I've been wanting to play there." I lived there for 6 years by then, and I had never played there, except for I went there for like one rat hockey or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they they have it's a D3 team. They put it in, and it was just a bunch of guys that were learning. But I went out there, and I actually felt way more comfortable being on the ice than I was feeling playing roller. And then I remembered why I like ice a little bit better. Roller hockey, I love roller hockey, but it's hard on the goalies. It's hard on your knees. It's hard on your hips. As I'm getting older, I was getting injured more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I got out with this team, and I'm like, I'm like, I really like playing on the ice. Once I got used to being back on the ice and being able to slide again, I'm still not an expert at it by any means.
Yeah.
But I'm much more comfortable than I was, and it's been 6 years now. So I bought some newer skates because I literally had 25-year-old skates. I was wearing the big Bozo skates.
Yeah. Hey, I'm still wearing my Reactor 5s that I bought 20 years ago. And you probably know the feeling. It's like you get a pair of skates and they just become an extension of you. You're almost scared to get new ones. Although I just ordered a couple of weeks ago my first new set of equipment in 21 years. So I think skates might be the next purchase after that.
That's great. I haven't gotten any really new gear until just this year. Like you, I use the same. I have DX2 full right Blackhawks colors, glove and blocker that I've been using since probably 1999.
Yep. That's when I bought my stuff.
And, yeah. And, I was able to find a pair of pads online from a guy who worked for Vaughn. They're black Vaughns, and I really liked them. I wanted a pair of black pads, so I bought them.
Yep.
But like just this last year, or actually probably 3 months ago, a guy I saw on one of the goalie Facebook message boards, GGSU.
Yep.
Most goalies know what GGSU is.
Yeah. If they're not on there, are they really a goalie?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I got one. I got another story about GGSU, and I'll tell you in a minute. But this guy, he posted up, it was full right, Blackhawks colors, Brian's set. And I'm like, well, this is just calling my name.
Yeah.
Because I had such a hard time breaking in. I had bought 3 sets of equipment before that, 3 sets of blocker and glove before that, and I couldn't break any of them in. So I ended up selling them because I was going out there and I just couldn't catch anything. And I felt so awkward. And so I was like, I've been very, very careful about my equipment because if one little thing's off, my whole game is a mess.
Oh, I know. And I get my new glove because I got the Legacy 4000 where, I mean, the thing's this big. I think it's probably the biggest glove they ever made. So I know I'm not going to be catching pucks for the first several weeks. I have that new one, just getting used to the smaller modern specs. And it's like, oh Lord, this is not going to, thank God most, people I'm going to be skating with probably haven't skated in a year because of COVID anyway. So it's not going to make that big of a difference. They're just going to think, pucks are going by because they're not playing well either. So that'll help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was convinced that I was never going to be able to find a pair of brand new glove and blocker that was ever going to be comfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, you put it on in a store, like you go to Pure Hockey or something, and I'm left-handed. So it feels weird because they don't ever have left-handed versions you could try on in the store.
No.
And then, the gear, a lot of these Pro Palms are very stiff. And like my DX2 is like really loose, nice and loose. Like I barely have to open my hand. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I thought about getting some like, I think it's McKinney I think it's McKinney. My friend who also plays at Canlan as well, a goalie that he was my ball hockey goalie growing up. But he got some like secondhand, and it was McKesky. Yeah, I don't know. There's 2 of them. There's like a McKinney, McKesky, and or Kineski.
Oh
too.
yeah. Yep.
And he got a secondhand set, and I'm like, hey, can I come up and look at it? Because like I don't know anyone who owns this stuff, and I don't know what the quality of it is.
Yeah.
But I wanted him to I was going to have him build me like a custom set that has the same break in the glove as my old DX2, because they don't make gear like that anymore.
Nope.
And my wrist is used to being in that certain position.
Yep.
With those old gloves, they've changed it. Your wrist is kind of tilted a little further up.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's been one of my biggest anxiety points with the new equipment is, how is it going to impact my game? All of that stuff. And when I placed my order, the fellows over at Vaughn understand my predicament. And so they've kind of worked with me to get specs as close to the old stuff as possible that they do today. Not your normal pure hockey specs. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah. So what was that other GGSU story you had?
Oh, I don't know if this is ever going to get back to the guy, but it doesn't matter because it's a funny story.
Yeah.
So I'm driving through Plainfield, Illinois to go get my kid from the YMCA, where it's like an after school program. And I'm driving down the main street, and it's like really slow. You got to drive through like 20 miles an hour or whatever. And something was happening, and I was looking at my phone. So I was like driving, looking at my phone, up and down. And then I look up in the rearview mirror, and there's a squad behind me, and he flips his lights on, and I'm like, all right. I've gotten pulled over in forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull over, and the guy gets out of the car, and he comes over to me, and he goes, hey, I pulled you over, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I was looking at my phone. He's like, yeah, you were looking at your phone. He's like, I pulled you over. He goes, listen, I noticed you had a GGSU sticker on the back of your truck. You goalie? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a goalie. And he goes, I am too. And I'm like, really? I'm like, where do you play? He's like, over at Canlan. I'm like, wow, what a small world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of talked shop a little bit, just for like a minute. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go write your warning and I'll let you go for today. So GTSU got me out of a ticket.
There we go. I love it. Yeah, it's funny on how once you connect with somebody that you're a goalie, it's like, doesn't matter what else is going on, who's around, that's the conversation, your best friends now. In fact, I was at my brother-in-law's wedding reception a few weeks ago, and this guy comes walking in, does not look like he'd be playing hockey. All right. Well, and all of a sudden it came out that he played hockey. He's like, you play hockey? He's like, yeah, I'm a goalie. It's like, wait a minute, hang on. The rest of the night, him and I were just standing in the corner with our beers, drinking and talking shop until it was time to go. And it was just funny. It's like, yep, I got my person to talk to now.
I got another story that just recently came up. And I was kind of like pointing this out to my wife because I was telling her, like, you don't kind of understand how hockey is. Hockey is like a club. Once you're in the club, there's all these divisions of the club, but everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I know this guy. I played with that guy. I did this, I played on a team in a tournament with this guy. And it's always like that. But the other day, last week, we sold our home, or 2 weeks ago, we sold our home, and we go in, to the closing, and I sit down, and we're just kind of talking, small talking with our lawyer and the other lawyers over there. And I'm like, the one thing I'm really going to regret about moving from this house is that I'm not as close to the ice rink, because I've never been that close to an ice rink before. Yeah. And like, I play there. It's easy for me to go. Liam, my son, skates there and plays there. My daughter does learn to skate there as well. Like it was so easy for me to go back and forth. Like that's what I'm gonna miss the most. And my lawyer looks at me and goes, "You play hockey?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I do too." And he's an older gentleman, doesn't seem like he would be, still playing sports. He says he's close to 60. He still plays with his buddies over in Indiana. Like, I'm like, wow, what a small world, And then, he's like, when Canlan opened, I was like on the board when they, set it up and everything and got it running. I'm like, wow, that's really weird. I look across the table at the lawyer for the people who are buying the house. He looks at me, he goes, "My kids played at Canlan." I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He's like, they're older now, like 13, 15 years old. He's like, but they all played on teams at Canlan and stuff like that as well. So I'm like, 3 out of the 4 groups in that room all had connection to playing hockey.
Yeah.
In one particular rink. It was just so weird.
It's funny on how you mentioned, how it's just like a small community. When I was in college, I went to school in Minnesota, and my coach went on a recruiting trip, and he's somewhere in the middle of Montana. And, he's got his St. Mary's stuff on, and he's in a rink, and some player looks at him and goes, "Hey, you know Joe Drennan?" He goes, "Yeah." How do you know him? And he's like, I used to play against him. I played for St. Rita. And my coach comes back and he goes, "Do you know a Brian Coleman?" I go, "Yeah, I used to play against him." He goes, "I ran into him in Montana and he's asking about you." And I was like, "You probably ran into the one person in the state of Montana that knows me." But it was just funny on how, you pop in somewhere and somehow there's that connection. I liken it back to my dad was a fireman for 30 plus years. Almost 30 of them in Chicago. In fact, there's a Stan Mikita story in there. But we couldn't go on any vacation. Didn't matter where we went. He would either find a fireman he knew or see somebody else with a fireman t-shirt. And, the old joke is, "You a fireman? I'm a fireman." Now the next 45 minutes, both families are just standing there like, "Are you guys done yet? Can we go on the next ride?" That was
my old man was a volunteer fireman for about a decade in Chicago Ridge. So
okay.
on top of being a Marine, And you know how the military guys are,
Yep.
you're a Marine, I'm a Marine. Oh, I was in a service. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a lot like that too. So I definitely saw it growing up that way.
There's a good chance our dads know each other because not only was he on Chicago, but he spent time on North Palos as a firefighter, and he taught for the state of Illinois. So I'm going to guess that their paths crossed at least once or twice in some
Probably.
aspect.
You say North Palos?
Yeah. He was on North Palos.
Yeah. My dad, after my dad quit the fire department, he started working for the Salvation Army canteen that would go out to the fires and feed the firefighters.
Yep.
And the canteen truck was out of North Palos.
Well, yeah, then he'll know, because the fire department is a family job. So my uncle was on North Palos. In fact, when my dad got on North Palos, he met my uncle, and my uncle introduced him to my mom because he was married to my aunt. And as my dad says, I've never forgiven him since. But my uncle was on North Palos until he retired, and sometime in the 90s. So they probably know each other too.
They probably did.
But my dad got his start in the fire department in Oak Brook back in the 70s. And Sam Nikita lived in Oak Brook at the time. And he was out of town, but lightning struck their house and his wife was home. And my dad responded to the fire. And then when the season ended, Stan started coming to the firehouse every Saturday with a coffee cake for the guys and would just sit and, BS with them. And when the Target in Crestwood opened, my mom was working there, and they brought in Bobby Hall and Stan Mikita. And I didn't know this until just recently when my mom was visiting, but she was in charge of setting up the car that was supposed to go get them. Well, she intentionally sent the car an hour early, knowing that they would get there an hour before the store opened and that I would be there to get autographs. So there you go. They show up, and the general manager, his kids were there too, because they played hockey. Of all the employees at the Target in Crestwood, they were, we were the only hockey players whose parents worked there. So we're sitting there, and so the GM's like, well, why don't you guys just go back in my office with these two guys? And, Bobby Hall was Bobby Hall, just his normal, energetic, charismatic self, telling stories. And Stan was just kind of quiet and reserved. And, and then I said, my dad says he knows you from back in Oak Brook. And he was just kind of like, oh yeah. I said, yeah, I worked on the fire department. And he just kind of stopped. And then it was like a light switch. He was my best friend at that point. It just kind of made that connection with them. So before I forget, I want to keep things moving along, because I have a feeling we could talk a bunch of South Side stories and haunts for a long time. Not to mention, the bar above SIA and how it always looked like nobody's parents were at the game because of that. So somewhere along the way, you start kind of covering hockey in one way or another with the Rink.com, the Rink-.com, for those looking it up. How did that start, and what got you into that?
Well, I've always kind of been a writer, like professional writer. That's not my profession, but I've always, I was always really good at writing papers and things like that through high school and stuff like that. And as I got out of high school, I would write little things here and there on the internet, on MySpace or whatever. Yeah. And they always got good, they always got received pretty well. But, I was a big hockey fan, but I vowed in about like 1999 that the way Bill Wirtz was destroying that team, I was not going to give him a single cent. So I didn't watch any games or go to any games from like 1999 to like 2007.
I forget who it was. I think somebody on the radio said the newspapers needed to have a dollar Bill Wirtz health meter every day in the paper to find out when we could rejoice and have a winning team again. And he was right. Once he died, they got a winning team.
Yeah. So as soon as he died, and I know this is cryptic, but I said it then, I was happy that day because we knew things were going to change. Yep. Games were going to be able to be broadcast on TV. They had already started, down the road of, drafting Taves and Kane, and that whole ordeal was already ramping up. You could see that the team was probably going to be better. And I was always a hockey fan. was not going to give money to the Wirtz family. And also, you know, early in the 2000s, I had gotten to like deeply into like doing media design for heavy metal bands.
Mm-hmm.
So I was tied up. Like hockey was just a moonlight thing that I did like once a week or twice a week, late at night. And like, I didn't even watch hockey much after that. So then I once the Blackhawks, you know, I was kind of writing things down, my thoughts down, and just kind of posted them on Facebook. And I'm like, you know what? I started thinking like a lot of these things I'm putting down, like are just things off the top of my head, just my experience from watching the game,
Yep.
you know, being a goalie, playing and all that stuff. It's just things that, you know, after a while, you just see there's these things that play in your head. Like you could see a play happen. You're like, oh, this guy did this and this happened. This is why he turned the wrong, you know, this way, or you're expecting the puck to come off a stick a certain way, things like that. And I would write them down because I liked writing, and it was just something for me to get my ideas out. And so I started writing about the Blackhawks before, you know, they won the cup in 2010, just kind of on my own, just writing down my thoughts about each game that I watched. I would write down some thoughts and I would put it online. And they like, some of these things are things I would hear from the other announcers or analysts. And I'm not saying I'm an announcer and an analyst. I'm just saying things that I saw, some of them also noticed and would bring up and point out. So, you know, I started I decided in 2010, I'm like, this is like the best thing in my life. Like them winning the cup. This, you know, I saw the White Sox do it at that point in time. That was great. But, and I'd seen the Bulls do it several times. That was great, but it was not a hockey team. So it was the Blackhawks, the team I had, you know, been rooting for since 1984, now had actually won a Stanley Cup, because they broke my heart. My senior year in high school was 1991 or 1992 when they lost and they got swept in the finals. That would have been my gift, you know, my great gift for my graduation would have been them winning the cup.
Yeah.
But so anyway, in 2010 they won the cup, and I'm like, well, I'm going to move this over into something more of a, you know, better online, so people could see what I'm writing instead of like me just filling up my Facebook page with it or whatever. So I started a website called Puck and Hostile, which if you'll notice, my Twitter handle is Puck and Hostile, because of the mix between heavy metal and hockey. Because it was a natural for me. I'm a huge metalhead. I had worked for metal bands, still work for metal bands. And I also enjoyed hockey, which you see a lot with like McKenna and they're big metalheads, like Robin Leonard.
Few goalies. Yeah. There's just something about gets you ready for the game.
I mean, Robin Leonard, he had how many masks with the band In Flames, which is one of my favorite bands.
Well, and then
you know,
Jay Weinberg, he's a goalie.
Yeah. From Slayer, or I mean, from Slipknot. Sorry.
Yeah.
Slipknot.
I love to get him on, but haven't gotten
You never know, man. You never know what could happen. I was thinking about reaching out to him myself on our own podcast that we're going to be having at some point in time, and seeing if he might want to come on. But he's a Predators fan, so if I was doing my Blackhawks podcast, I don't think he would have wanted to come on as the enemy.
Yeah. Well, I almost moved down to Nashville this last year, and we're putting that off for 5 years so the kids are done with high school till we do that. So yeah, maybe that's when he'll wind up on the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, well, I started Puck and Hostile, and it was just me getting my thoughts out there.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw, you know, what the online coverage was of the Blackhawks, and it wasn't all that great. No. And it wasn't any better than what I was doing. So I just kept putting it out there. And you know, I got a pretty decent following. I'm not going to say anything great, but after a couple of years, a kid, because that ball hockey league, I went back after I aged out and I started coaching there, and I didn't have any kids there. We was just me and my friend coaching, trying to pass on our knowledge to kids and teach them. And we were the coaches of their traveling team as well. We would have tryouts, and then we would take their senior traveling team, which is all high school age kids, to Pennsylvania to play in tournaments. But so I coached several kids from 1995 till 2000, you know, whenever I stopped in 2007 or 2008. In 2013, I wanted to get a podcast started, but I'm not a guy who's going to talk to myself. So I'm like, I need someone that I feel comfortable with, that we can bounce things off of and have a good time. I wanted, to integrate humor into it. I wanted to integrate, sound bites and all kinds, a little bit of the crazy morning zoo type, more than just two guys online talking hockey.
Yep.
So we would joke around. We'd have joking contests and things like. But anyway, this guy Pat that I coached, he was a goalie when he was younger. I had heard through the grapevine that he was actually doing some loose writing on some blog somewhere. I don't remember what the name of it was at the time, but I know it's defunct now. And I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, would you want to come on and we'll just get on and we'll do a podcast. We'll just talk hockey and we'll just joke around. Because I knew he had a good sense of humor and everything. He's like, yeah, that sounds like fun, So the first one, it was called the Puck and Hostel Shoutcast, and it was started in 2013. And we started that up, and then I was like, well, let's do another one together, and then let's do another one together, and then let's do another one together. And it turned out, it just started being like we both did this together, that we were a team on this thing.
Yeah.
And then he started writing on my website. He's like, if I'm going to write, why don't I just come over on your website? I can write what I want to say. It doesn't have to be, heavily edited or anything like that. Yeah. I'm like, okay, come on over. And we started that. And that's where Puck and Hostel went from 2010, until about 2017. We all did that together. And then we kind of started to get burned out. And a friend of mine, who had been on the podcast several times. His name's John Jekyll. He was the big poster for the Blackhawks over on Hockey Buzz for a while. Mm-hmm. He came to me and he's like, I'm thinking of kind of trying to do my own thing. And I had been on the podcast with you, and I know, kind of our ideas align and stuff like that. So he's like, would you want to start your own thing? And I had turned down a couple of other offers before that to like come and be the Hawks guy for these, kind of not media conglomerate, but, a bigger company that had a Chicago division.
Yep.
And I told him, no, it just didn't feel right to me. I just I can't let my baby go, because I created this. I built it from the ground up, unless I have the real feeling of wanting, to move on. Like, I'm very, very comfortable with doing it. And I got along really well with John, and things were, getting more busy for me. I couldn't write as much and things like that. So we decided to start the-rink.com, which you can see on the hat.
Yeah.
We're like, because we were able to get someone, founding sponsor, which is puckhockey.com. You can see on the thing. And they make hockey, heavy metal themed hockey wear, which I'm like, what is more perfect? I was actually a fan of them. So it all kind of just, it made sense. So we started this thing, and our hope was we'd start with Chicago because we were both Chicago guys, but we wanted to open up divisions for as many other hockey teams and cities as possible. Yeah. And that was in 2017. And now, you could see I moved from Chicago to the Seattle beat. I got kind of fed up with Chicago for now. And John's going to probably move over and do Columbus, because he lives in Columbus.
Yep.
And we've got some great people running the Chicago division.
Yeah.
And we're having a great time.
Columbus is an undercover, really sneaky good hockey market. I have family that lives in Columbus. They're diehard Blue Jackets fans, and it's almost like it's too small of a city for it to really be obvious of how big of hockey fans they are there.
Yeah. And we also have a Colorado division. I don't want to forget about them. We got a guy who runs our Colorado division. They're nice and quiet, and they do their stuff. They don't ever rustle any feathers. So that's why sometimes it's easy to leave them out of the conversation, but they're doing a great job there.
Yeah.
But back to Columbus, we went out. I went there a couple times for Blackhawks games, and it was a great time. Like, even though we were Chicago fans, it was still a great time going there and watching hockey. Yeah.
The people of Ohio, as long as you're not going to a Buckeye game wearing Michigan stuff, they're pretty darn cool at their games. And it's funny I mentioned that. My uncle is a huge Buckeye fan. I mean, he doesn't leave the house without a Buckeye nut in his pocket, just because. So when him and my aunt got married, I was like maybe 5-6 years old. I showed up at the wedding reception with the Michigan t-shirt on, just because that's who I am. He still has not forgiven me all these years later. He sees the humor in it, but he still won't forgive me.
Yeah, that's John, who lives in Columbus. I mean, you wouldn't know it, but he grew up in the Chicagoland area, so that's why he's so tuned into the Blackhawks and stuff. But he's from Columbus, and he's over the running inside gag joke is like, what is the point of the podcast when he's going to bring up how great the Columbus Blue Jackets are, because his wife is a big Blue Jacket fan and he's become one as well.
Yeah, well, they've had teams that they tease you just enough to think they're going to be great to, get you watching them and get you excited. So I can see how that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing we can't ignore too is the Rink merchandise is pretty killer looking too. People
Thanks,
need to check it out.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
we actually went to puck hockey and said, hey, will you design our stuff? Because we don't want to just throw together some crazy stuff that's really poor quality.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something that was nice if the fans were going to be nice enough to buy them. So, and it's really nice to have a company that's actually a distributor of merchandise.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to go buy anything from that site, from puckhockey.com, if you use the Rink, you get 10% off on all of your orders. So, and it's not like we're doing it for kickbacks or anything like that. We're just doing it because we like the stuff.
Yeah.
And they give us a deal, a 10% deal on, merchandise and stuff like that. So all the stuff that I bought is slightly cheaper than it should have been.
Yeah. And it's funny. Like, I've got some threadless stuff on my website and it's like, nope, I'm just hoping to maybe cover a portion of the web hosting fees if I'm lucky, not getting rich off of this stuff here.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is over at the Rink. I mean, we do this out of our free time for free. And actually, I'll be honest, John and I are out of pocket. We're out of pocket to be able to provide the content that we provide.
Yeah.
So just to be able to get anything to take the edge off of a hosting fee for a podcast or the website. I mean, I designed the website. We didn't have anyone professionally do it. That was me. I did all of it. And it took a lot of time to get it all together and get it up and working. And it's like, we don't have extra disposable income for that stuff.
No.
So it's like, any little bit that we could get to help us shave off that debt for doing this is nice.
Yeah. It's the same thing on my side. It's a labor of love. And, you start doing it because it gives you an outlet to, talk hockey with people that want to listen to you, because at some point your wife and kids get tired of hearing it. I know that was one of the reasons my wife and kids wanted me to start the podcast. They're like, maybe if you talk to other people about it regularly, you'll stop talking to us about it. And it works sometimes, but I'm still boring them from time to time with my stuff.
Yeah. So, my wife would get tired of it, because it was like, even when I was doing Puck and Hostel, and she's been, we've been together pretty much the whole time I've been doing this website. I was doing my old website and everything. So she's pretty much known me as a writer about the Blackhawks almost the entire time we've been together. And for the first, and I don't even know how I did this. I right now I couldn't do it. But for from 2010, right after they won the cup, I kind of started my site and moved everything off of Facebook till Pat came on with me in 2013. I watched and wrote about every single Blackhawks game.
Yep. Everyone. That's one of the things too, is I found is doing this gives us that excuse as to why we need to watch that game. Like, no, I need the remote. You can't watch Real Housewives. I got to watch the game. Well, why you got to do that? Well, I'm going to be talking to somebody tomorrow about the game. Okay, here you go.
Yeah. I mean, and man, there was hundreds of games, every year that I had to watch every single one of them. And I wrote about every single one of them because I was obsessive about it.
Those West Coast late night games, they can get to you sometimes.
Yeah. And I would have to figure out a way to get it, before DVRs or something like that, to be able to do stuff like that. There was only a handful of times where I had to construct a game recap from just the highlights, or just the the condensed game, which is a 10-minute set of highlights. Because nothing's perfect. There's no way that I could watch every single Blackhawks game in that time, and not miss some of them with kids and the whole thing and life and work and all that stuff.
It's funny because during the championship runs, my folks live out in North Carolina now. So during games, me and my dad would be texting each other back and forth. And if I was not going to be watching the game live to start, I would have to send him a text like, I'm DVRing the game. I will let you know when I'm back to live hockey. And it was just understood like, okay, no text about the game until I get that one from you that you're back to live hockey. Otherwise, I'm going to spoil it for you. And we don't want to do that. And there were times where I got the same one from him, like, hey, we're going out to eat tonight. I'll let you know when I'm back. Okay, sounds good. It was just like
That's a good way to go about it, because, I could definitely get spoiled.
Yeah. My wife was working for a company, and she was at an event, and one of her coworkers was also from Chicago and a huge Hawks fan. And it was a playoff series. And I think it was a game 7 in one of the earlier rounds. And like me, he was DVRing the game, and it was about 30 minutes past the start of the game. And he's walking by, and she goes, hey, did you hear about the game? And, she just kind of rubbed him. He's like, shut up. I don't like you. Just like runs away. She just starts laughing. She's like, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I promise. So I'm trying to be conscious of time. If you've listened to any of the podcasts, you'll know I end with a series of 10 rapid fire questions that aren't so rapid because they bring up more stories. But the first one is, what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing or coaching days?
Oh God. Geez. I think from the coaching side, it's more from the coaching side and the way the kids act, because I never really growing up, other than the ball hockey, I didn't have like a formal coach. Mm-hmm. So it was more from when I was the coach, and the way, we would do these trips where we'd take these kids to Pennsylvania to play, because deck hockey, they call it deck hockey out there. Yep. It's huge out there. It's huge. Yeah. They've got 7-8 rinks, and they did back then too. They just moved them around, and they're all sponsored by the Penguins. And like, these leagues are from 4 years old till men's league, and they run every day of the week, and like, they're huge. Mm-hmm. And so we would pick these teams, and we take these high school age kids, and we're not that far out of high school.
Yeah.
I'm in my 20s probably.
What's wrong with mom and dad letting their kid go with a bunch of their friends and some barely older guys?
Yeah, we would. And back then, like now it's like the parent takes their kid out there, and the parent is responsible for, booking a room. The parent is responsible mm-hmm. for then getting the kid to the rink. But it wasn't like that back then. Back then it was, they rent a big van. Mm-hmm. What's stranger than a pair of guys that are in their 20s with a whole van full of high school kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we would do this every year. And there was this hotel we would stay at, and it was really run down. It's still there. I drove by it when we went to Pennsylvania, because now my kid plays on the travel team going to Pennsylvania, which is come full circle. It's really weird. But there was this hotel where the reason that they booked it every year is because they didn't get that upset about the shenanigans that would go on with these kids. So you can imagine the quality of the hotel that it was there in Penn Hills, Pennsylvania. Shout out to Penn Hills, Pennsylvania. And so we get there, and probably, I would say, half the hotel is like dark, closed mm-hmm. down. And they had like a ballroom kind of thing at one part of the hotel. It was very big and open. You could look over like these balconies to look down into like what used to be maybe a banquet area.
Yeah.
And so where we get there, and we get the kids, it's one adult with a group of kids per room. So you have to have a chaperone, of course. So that's what we're doing. And we heard through the grapevine from one of the kids that they were doing some crazy stuff at the other end of the hotel. So me and my other coach go walking over there, and in this big ballroom, there was like all the mattresses they had taken out of all of the dark rooms, and they'd stacked them up sideways, just all right up against each other. And what these kids had done is they had taken about 4 or 5 of them, laid them down, and were jumping off the balcony. It's only the second floor, but it's off the balcony that overlooks the banquet room onto these mattresses. And of course, we had to squash this really quick.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what are you guys doing? You guys are a bunch of idiots. What are you doing? You kill yourselves. You missed that thing. Like, no one got hurt in the end, and it was a lesson learned. But that was probably one of the craziest things that I experienced.
And at the same time, you're looking at going, that looks kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what was your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Oh, you know, I could go Ed Belfour, but it's a really played out mask. Honestly, my favorite and it wasn't of my favorite player. We didn't even discuss who my favorite player was, but this Darren Pang had an early mask that was the Indian headdress. He was one of the first people to do it. He did it before Jeff Hackett did it.
Yep.
And it had like an orange tinge to it.
Yeah.
And I've never really been able, I found a picture that I think might be the mask that I was thinking of, but it was back then having a mask with a headdress on it was so cool. It was a great idea because no one had done it before.
Yep.
So that's the one that always sticks out in my memory, other than the mask from Youngblood, which I actually have tattooed on my arm.
That's a pretty good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what one you're talking about for Paying, and that was a sweet looking mask. And it's interesting because like it's a mask that makes so much sense for the Hawks. Jeff Hackett's was so beautifully done, but I don't think you'll see another Hawks helmet like that now that they've made the decision. You know, rightfully so. They don't want fans wearing headdresses to the game, but how do you send down this edict that fans can't wear that to the game, and then you let your goalie paint one on his helmet?
Yeah. But, yeah, that's definitely going to change.
Yeah, I mean that Jeff Hackett one was gorgeous. I may have done an art project or two based off of that mask in high school.
I had a friend who I mentioned earlier that he's still a goalie, still plays up at Canlan.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look him up, he paints goalie masks. His name is Don McClellan, Mac Masks on Facebook. If you look it up, he's a great artist. He was a great artist back in school. He took one of those old Milek, when they first made the Milek masks that had the cages on them. He hand painted that mask to match Darren Pang's mask because he had to have it back then. And I'm like, I realized what a great artist he was back then, and now look what he's turned out to be. But that amazed me. I love that. Even when his version of the mask was just so cool.
Now, you mentioned that we haven't touched on your favorite player. Who is your favorite player?
Mike Vernon.
Mike, you know, he was the Red Wing that was hard to hate.
The thing about it was, though, I didn't like him as a Red Wing. I only liked him as a Calgary Flame.
Yep. That was a good time to like him, though.
Because I started watching hockey in 1986 when the final between Watt and Vernon. Vernon, they were both rookie goalies. I wanted to be a goalie, and the Calgary Flames were kind of the underdog, and I always had a thing for liking the underdog back then. I was in 6th grade or whatever. Yeah. So Mike Vernon was my guy, and he was a shorter dude. I'm a shorter dude. Like a lot of things fit together. So Mike Vernon was my guy. I mean, when he went to the Wings, I still liked him as a player. I certainly didn't like anything that he did on the ice.
Yeah. No, I
except for beat up Patrick Waugh.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like you talk about the Wings. I remember I come home from high school and my mom goes, they traded Chris Chelios. And I go, just tell me it wasn't to the Wings. And she just looks at me and like walks away. Is like, son of a bitch. It was like, now I can't like Chris Chelios anymore. And I remember I go upstairs and I turn on Q101 and they announced that he's been traded. And then they played Praise You Like I Should. And it was like, oh, what a perfect song for that moment. And then it was like, and now we hate Chris Chelios.
I've got a slight story about Chris Chelios too, and I'll make it quick. So we would go to do skating up a St. Spectrum. My brother, biggest Dennis Savard fan you'll ever meet in your life. Love Dennis Savard, like worships plays like him, all that stuff. My brother's all dressed up, got his Dennis Savard jersey on. He's about to get on the ice. who comes off the ice? Chris Chelios. And he just kind of looks at my brother's jersey. He's like, nice jersey. And then turns around and walks away.
Yeah. Because of where we grew up, it wasn't uncommon to run into Chelios. I work at the Oakland ice rink in high school, and the day he gets back from Nagano and he's not a happy camper because of what happened, his kid's got a game. And so he comes to the game and all of these kids are coming up to him. And it's like, anybody that was old enough to know is like, today's not a good day. But every kid that came up to him, he looked at him, he smiled at him and gave him his autograph. And was like, all right, doesn't matter that you're playing for the Wings these days, class act. And ran into him a couple other times when I was in college when he brought the cup back to Evergreen Park and my mom went up to see it. I was like, how could you do that? She's like, it's the cup. I was like, but a Red Wing brought it. And like, I don't care that it's the cup. At least like I went and saw the cup when Nick Leddy brought it back to Eden Prairie, Minnesota, because that's where I live these days, up in Minnesota. I was like, that makes sense. Like, he was a Hawk when he won it. And so I still give my mom grief every now and then that she went and saw Red Wing with the Stanley Cup. So the next question, your favorite rink that you've played at?
Favorite rink that I've played at? What's probably my ice hockey rinks, I've only played, in a handful of them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's actually, it's not because it's the nicest rink. It's because it's kind of one of the most interesting rinks. There's an inline hockey rink in Cincinnati, Ohio. And anyone who's a fan of Nasher on YouTube can see his videos. He actually plays there too. I went out there to play some roller hockey tournaments, and basically next to the rink are zip lining, and they have all kinds of stuff like, zip lining and kids parties and rock walls and all that stuff around the rink while you're playing roller hockey in the middle of all this chaos. I would say that one, just because of how interesting it was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. When you said it, not because it's the nicest, is like, do not say Saint Spectrum. Nobody will ever say that's their favorite rink.
No, not for sure. And I also want to say, shout out to this guy, Keith Schultz. He used to run Blackhawk Up. He used to work at SIA. So we kind of, now and then you'll see us kind of jabbing back and forth about, well, it's no SIA or anything like that. But yeah.
God, I have fond memories of that rink because I went to the Murray Bannerman Learn to Skate there. That's how I learned how to skate, was at that one, because my dad, one of his co-workers at the firehouse, Mr. Carbonneau, he was one of the skating instructors for that. He's like, yeah, starting up, you should sign him up. And it's like, oh yeah, I want to go to that one. If Murray Bannerman's running, of course I'll go.
I'm so jealous of you. I would have loved to have done that. Murray Bannerman, man.
Well, it was funny because I remember like going to that. It's like, one day I'm going to be as good of a hockey player as him. And then I watched the Stadium Series alumni game from Minnesota at TCF Bank Stadium. And I'm going, yep, that day's come. I'm now a better hockey player than Murray Bannerman.
I think I may have just surpassed Tony O the last time he skated.
Well, yeah. God rest his soul. I won't make the bad joke.
Yeah, right. No, I got you. Yeah. Tony O, man. He was great, man.
Yeah.
So and he's lefty too.
Yeah, he was. And God, the way he revolutionized the position, as I said to several people, Glenn Hall was the grandfather of the butterfly, but Tony Esposito revolutionized it.
Yeah.
And he changed the way the game was played because of it. And then there's the story of him having the fishing line between the legs of his hockey pants to stop more pucks.
Yep.
Yeah. When that day I met Bobby Hall and Sam Makita, Bobby was telling us that story, and he said, when he got caught and heavily fined, he said it didn't matter with the number of pucks it stopped.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It was well worth it.
Yeah. And as I say, how much truth there is to that story, we don't know, because it is still a Bobby Hall story, but there's got to be some truth in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is a question I like to ask goalies, because we all seem to have that one. What's your favorite stick that you've ever used?
Curtis Curve, baby.
Oh, you were one of those guys using that.
I love the Curtis curve.
Yeah.
Now I realize that those things were heavy as hell.
Oh yeah.
But at the time I loved it because at the time I like to go paddle down a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped with the paddle down. Plus, picking up the stick. It's got the curve at the butt end, so no matter which way it lays on the ice, and even if you don't have a big butt end, you could still get it up off the ice.
Yep.
That was by far my favorite stick. I loved it.
See, I was kind of like a Braden Holtby where I would go with the full roll of tape on the knob when I was younger. Now, not so much, but so to me, the Curtis curve was never an option because it's like, well, I'm not going to get it down all the way. But I had buddies in goalie camps that had them, and of course, we all tried it out. But I used the Christian sticks too for an awful long time.
Me too.
College.
Yeah, I've moved on now. I use Warriors, like the Swaggers and the Woodies, just the cheap ones.
That's what I'm using. So if you use the Christian, I know you had to have done it too when that heel starts spreading apart like a sponge. You throw a little wood glue in there and put it in the vise overnight to give it some more life.
Of course.
Everybody
throw a little tape over it. Yeah, you're good to go.
Everybody who had a Christian goalie stick did that. And if they say they didn't do it, it's like, well, then I don't believe that you used a Christian goalie stick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's your favorite youth hockey memory?
Youth hockey memory. Oh boy. I don't know if there's it's again, I don't know that this is necessarily a good story, but it's a story. and I still tell my kids this because it's not like this anymore. But it was definitely like this when I was younger at that ball hockey league, Southwest Ball Hockey. They were having a hard time getting high school age kids to play.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, always played because I loved it so much. It was so much fun, and I got to play against my buddies and stuff like that. So what they said is you could go out and you could bring your friends to come play, and they could play on your team as long as we just get people out here to play, so we could have 4 teams to play the season. So I ended up getting a team, and my other friends and some of the people I played football against played on some other teams. So you can imagine that a bunch of people who all know each other are now being competitive at a, in a league level. It's not just playing, at the tennis courts at home. Right. This is now we're playing for something, a trophy, whether it's a trophy or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it got pretty hairy a couple games, and high school kids being, full of testosterone.
Yeah.
Yelling and screaming and wanting to win, beat the next guy or whatever. Got it. We ended up with a couple of fights, and some of them rolled out into the parking lots of the Southwest Ball Hockey. Got people in a lot of trouble. And they had to go up against the board. They have to go in front of the board to not get suspended. Yeah, I was a pretty low key kid. Like I didn't get involved in a lot of the I knew my dad would have murdered me because my dad was a referee there. My dad would have been a Marine, being one of the referees in the league. My dad would have murdered me if I would have gotten involved in a fight. Right. So I was just like,
you knew where the line was.
Yeah, but I watched a fight roll into the parking lots. And the police almost have to be called. Yeah. And that was one of the games.
Yeah. So
against friends.
I was thinking about this last night laying in bed where that rink is. It's like right next door is the old Keebler plant.
Yes.
Or building. And then on the other side of the Keebler building, which when we were little kids, Mom and Dad had us convinced that the Keebler trees were in there and the elves lived in there. But there's a 3-4-year-old, you're pretty gullible. But right next door, I forget, it's some kind of apprentice school now, but it was the Moraine Valley Satellite.
It's
facility.
the IBEW now, electric.
Yeah.
I think it's the electric where they teach all the union guys. It was Moraine Valley back then.
Yeah, one of my dad's side jobs from the fire department was security guard for Moraine Valley. And every so often he would have to do an overnight over there. And there was a few times where he brought me with, and, he had this little handheld black and white TV. We'd bring with and watch Three Stooges, but he'd bring my Hot Wheel with too, my Transformers Hot Wheel. And I would ride that thing through that school, and he'd open up the doors of the gym and I'm burning Hot Wheel donuts
great.
in the gym. And there were a few times like, oh shit, you left marks on the gym floor with your Hot Wheel. But yeah, so every time I drive by there when I'm back in town, I kind of chuckle to myself that I rode my Hot Wheel through that whole thing.
It's such a niche, that rink over there is such a niche thing.
Yeah.
And you don't find this in like I said, like in Pittsburgh and stuff like that. You don't find the where you have like as much of the ice hockey snobs as you do in Chicago. Like, it's like, do you play hockey? Oh yeah. Where do you play? Oh, I play ball hockey. Oh, ball hockey. That's not hockey. Like, there was a lot of that, because it's like, and again, that kind of what pushed me over to ice hockey a little bit too. It's like, I want to be considered a real hockey player. Like, I'm not considered a real hockey player, even though I know I'm a real hockey player.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not considered it, because there was this snob thing. And the ice hockey players wouldn't play ball hockey because they look down on it. It's beneath them.
Yeah.
But with the COVID thing happening, they shut down all the ice rinks in the area. So a bunch of the ice hockey kids are like, well, if I want to play hockey somewhere. So their parents signed them up. They had more this last year. They had more ice hockey kids than they've ever had. And what they found out, these kids loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. And they come back, and they're coming back now. So it's not, hopefully it's bridging the gap a little bit, because to me, hockey's hockey. I don't care if it's roller. I don't care if it's deck. I don't care if it's ice. Hockey's hockey.
Yeah.
You got to be good to be able to compete at hockey, at any hockey.
My high school coach would get frustrated with us, especially early in the season, because every day after school, when there wasn't snow on the ground, we would meet up at the one, there's that little elementary school, Evergreen Park Elementary School, right next to Mother McCauley. And they had a beautiful blacktop parking lot. And we would meet up there every day after school and play roller hockey until it got dark. And our coach would just get so frustrated, because we'd be doing drills and you got to do tight turns, and everybody's taking these roller hockey turns.
Yeah.
He's like, you guys have been out there playing roller hockey too much again. You got to cut it out here. It's impacting your game out here. And we're like, calm down. We'll get back into it. We just haven't skated in a while. But it's just funny. He's like, he encouraged it because it was just free flowing hockey, unstructured. That's where you get good. And he understood that, but he just hated the turning aspect of it.
Well, that's where you kind of learn you learn what kind of a player you are.
Yeah.
You can't do that in a super structured, like, coached environment, because it's like the coach wants you to do certain things to get the game moving, but your personality comes out when you're playing just with your friends. You figure out, are you a dangler? Are you a shooter? Are you a passer? Are you defensive guy? Are you, a goalie? What kind of goalie are you? Stand-up goalie? Are you a goalie that goes down a lot? Like, that's where it's all put together.
Yeah. I mean, up here in Minnesota, they play as much pond hockey as they do street hockey, because we can. And my son, he hasn't played organized hockey because they don't have house league hockey up here, which I think is a huge miss.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's 6 to 8 nights, sessions a week that he'd be on the ice, and to him, that's too much. But once the ponds freeze over, he loves it. He's down there all the time skating, and he's always trying to put on the pads because I don't know where they came from, but there's just a neighborhood set of pads down at the pond. And, it's just kind of understood, no lifting the puck. So you just have these, leg pads on and some gloves and a stick, and no mask, no chest protector. And he absolutely loves it. And then this year we had the past couple of years, my neighbors had the backyard rink. This year it hopped over into my yard. And it's just like every night he's just out there skating, having fun. Because it's pretty hard to practice goalie by yourself unless you're Steve Carell.
Yep.
And his masterful video, which I don't know if you've seen, but
I have. Yeah.
My kids and I recreated it this year.
Nice.
So I've got that up on my YouTube channel. It was kind of fun. I had the
I'll
day
check
off
it out
on my birthday, and we did a shot for shot recreation of it and had fun together.
That sounds awesome.
So next question, what's the best chirp you've heard I say on or off the ice, but obviously on the blacktop as well.
Geez, I don't know. You know what? I got to be honest with you. I chirp so much that I don't hear many of the chirps coming back.
So
and not because they don't do it. It's just because I'm in such I'm such a rage and I'm so focused at yelling at people because I'm a mouthy goalie. I'll be the first one to admit I could be a little bit of a head case at times.
What's the best one you've thrown out there then?
Oh, you know, they all come off the top of my head and I'll usually pick something. And I can't even really explain my thought process when I come up with these because I just come up with them off the top of my head as I'm playing. Like, you know, my latest one has always been D-League All-Star because you get these guys who are playing in a D-League that should be playing in a B-League and they come out and they're scoring 7 goals a game on me. Yeah. And I'm like, are you happy? You know, you're a D-League All-Star. So that's been like my big one lately of calling them. But I've gone, you know, I'll pick out like their, you know, something that looks silly, like their skates. Like some guys got the guys with the guys with the tinted visors. Oh my God, they drive me insane. Yeah. I will go, even if they've done nothing wrong, I will go immediately at them and have to chirp them about their dumb visor.
Yep.
I like I saw a guy who had these like blue skates or something, and the guy was a terrible skater. And I'm like, why do you and he had like the tinted shield on and he had a mouthpiece in and he had like all the brand new equipment and like he went out and spent way too much money and he's not good at hockey. And I'm like, he was just the ultimate you know, person to rag on because everything from head to toe was just a mess.
Wearing shoulder pads and men's league,
nothing
one
matched.
Of those guys.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We had a kid.
And you know, you always know the guys who are actually really good are the guys who don't match, nothing matches.
Right. They got the torn up Zuba pants, you know, with the skate laces holding on the shin pads. And yeah, those are always the ones I watch out for. The guy that comes out with all the brand new stuff. I'm like, all right, I got to actually try a little harder if you get a breakaway because you're not going to do what you're supposed to.
That's a great, I just talked about somebody with this. I go, you know, the hard thing about playing D-League hockey is, and there's nothing against D-League hockey. I enjoy playing it, but when you're used to the puck coming in like true and straight, it's wobbling and it's up and it's down. Yeah. And like when they're supposed to pass and you're thinking about it and you're like, okay, he's supposed to pass right here. They don't pass. Yep. Or when he's going to shoot and you're like, they always shoot from this spot. He doesn't shoot.
Yeah. Or a 2-on-0 and they pass it over and it's like, they're supposed to shoot right away. And no, instead they pass it back and then they hold on to it too long and circle behind the net. And I've said it for a long time. It's much harder in beer league to play down than it is to play up because of that. There's a clear talent level when you're going down, and it's not necessarily talent as it is hockey sense. They don't have the hockey sense. We have one player on our team. He never played organized hockey. You would probably be chirping him on the ice because he's a true ankle bender and he knows it. When you know, his ankles are turning in as he's skating, but he's one of the best defensemen I have because he's got incredible hockey sense. If there's a 2-on-1, I know there's not going to be a shot because he gets his stick in there. He reads the plays well. Then I got another defenseman, great skater, great puck handler. As Herb Brooks would say, 10-cent fart for a brain when it comes to hockey sense. It's like if there's a 2-on-1, I know that that guy can come all the way in and make a move, or he's going to get the pass off. But the ankle bender, I'll take him late in the game on the ice anytime.
Oh yeah, I could totally understand that. And like, I have to apologize to my hockey team or any team I've ever played on because not only am I goalie and I'm a little nuts, but I'm a coach at heart. So like I'm coaching from the net because that's what I feel, you know, I just used to be do this, go here, do this. I'm used to shouting instructions to the kids. Yep. And like, I can't not do it. So like I'm like thinking about it. But you talk about like the ankle bender guy, you know, if you're out there and you're trying and you're learning and you're getting better, I respect that 1,000%. Yeah. So I don't go hard on the ankle bender part of it more than like the guy who's out there who thinks he's way better than he is. Yeah. and he's not, he's okay. But
Yeah, we got a few of those guys.
To show off and thinks he's way better than I'm going to go with that guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go with like the guys unless it's like one of those tryhards where it's like the guy can't skate and he scores a goal because they banked it off of his pad and he's screaming his head off. And I'm like, dude, you relax. I just gave up a goal to the worst guy on the team. I'm the one who should be feeling bad.
Yeah. Yeah. In junior, our ankle bender, what I love about him too is like in the locker room, he'll ask me questions like, what should I have done in that situation? And it was like, he wants to learn. He wants to know more. So he's got that appetite, but yeah, it's funny. And like you said, coaching, it brings out a different aspect too. Cause after college, I did some coaching at the high school level here. When I was in college, I did coaching at our summer hockey camps. And so it's just like, it's ingrained in me that I'm a coach now too. And so between periods, I'll come to the bench and I'll kind of give my, between period synopsis as if I was a coach. Is like, we got to get the puck moving better. We got to get, stop skating it behind the net, shoot the puck. And it's to the point now where I come to the bench and the boys are just waiting for it. They're like,
yeah,
right. Our team captain, we call him coach, but when I come to the bench, we're like, what should we be doing, coach? What are we doing wrong? And they just roll their eyes, but I have to say it. I got to get it off my chest.
Yeah. And the bad part about it too was like, they didn't like some of these people that I played with don't realize that I had coached.
Yeah.
And I'd been a coach for several years over and over and over. So it's like, what is this loudmouth goalie yelling at us about? Like, I totally understand it now. Back then I didn't see it, but I tried to explain, like, listen guys, I've been coaching kids for 20 years.
Yeah.
On and off. Like, it's just natural to me. If I see something happening, like I'm trying to shout, trying to help them out.
Yep.
And that's what I'm trying to do to you. I'm trying to help you out. Sometimes I get a little carried away, but that's what happens.
The team I'll be playing on this fall, I was going to play on two of them because there's a team in the division above us. Their goalie's having surgery, so he's going to be out. And I got the email earlier today that my regular team is opting out this fall because they can see that the mask mandate's coming back here in Minnesota, and they're scared it's going to. In Minnesota, they required the mask on the ice too. Even though Mayo Clinic is like, that's the time not to wear it. And my teammates, even though most of them are firefighters, all said, we don't have an issue with the mask mandate. We have an issue with the fact that we're not in a physical condition to skate with the mask. And I go, that's cool, but concerning at the same time that you're all firefighters and don't. And they're like,
what about your masks that you need to breathe?
They're like, we see the irony. We know. But the team I'll be playing on now, just solely, I would say at least a third of us have coached or are coaching. So there's that's one of the reasons they're a little bit better too. They look at the game a little bit different, which it's interesting. You pointed that one out. So the next question is always a fun one. What's the worst post-game beer you've had?
The worst post-game beer, most beer. I'm not a huge beer guy, to be honest with you. Like, I'm happy with Coors because it's watered down.
To me, is one of, I think that's almost the ideal post-game beer because it's, as long as it's cold, because it's just kind of that refreshing, like you said, a little bit watered down. Like I like craft beer, but not right after a game. That Coors Light is just, or up here, Mick Golden Light is still pretty big. In fact, I'm skating for a tournament tomorrow on Team Mick Golden. So
there you go.
That's another decent post game beer in my opinion.
Well, here, I let me give it a little bit of a shout out. The best, I'll have the best beer that I've ever had. Wink, wink, is Three Floyds, because my hockey team that I play on is Floyd's Hammers, and we are sponsored by Three Floyds. So Three Floyds is the best for post game.
That is a good beer. I wish we were able to get it up here in Minnesota. In fact, one of the brewers came from Surly up here, Todd, who's a big metalhead guy. And before he left Surly, they came out with a recipe just for him called Todd the Axeman. And that was a pretty darn good beer. Yeah. But he wound up at Three Floyds because of kind of that metal background, and it just kind of fit personality. But yeah, that's a great beer.
Yeah, we got really nice Three Floyds, or they were called Floyd's Hammers, really nice stitched jerseys. So
Sweet.
shout out to Three Floyds.
So when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
You know what? I used to go toe to heel. And then I heard Jeff Merrick say heel to toe. Yeah, there's no snow. So I changed over the time. So so I've done both, but now I do a heel to toe.
Yep. I've always done heel to toe. So what's your favorite number to wear? And more importantly, why?
48.
Why 48?
48 has been I wore 30 at times because Mike Vernon when 48 or wasn't available or something, but I don't have a real great story about 48 other than I was a better football player than I was a hockey player, that's for sure. And I was a better I was better at track than I was at football. So when I played football, my number was actually 44, which I loved. I loved that number. But the coach mistakenly, when he was giving out numbers my junior year, he had asked, Osborn, what do you want your number to be? And I was a running back and receiver. So, what those numbers are going to be. So I was like 44 and he's like, no, it's taken, which it wasn't. But what am I going to do? Argue with this guy? I'm not going to argue with this guy because if you know Coach Gary Corhone and at Richards, you don't argue with that man. So I'm like, okay, how about 40? No, 44. How about 46? Nope, taken. How about 48? 48, boom, because I love numbers in the 40s. So 48 just became my number. I adopted it as mine playing football, and I carried it on to hockey with me. I'm like, I'm going to be one of those guys who's married to his number. Some people aren't. I am very much the obsessive compulsive married to my number. Like I literally have a closet full of jerseys that were designed by a good friend of mine that all have 48 on them because I want to wear my number.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's funny you say that because like my brother-in-law, he played baseball, he played football, he played hockey, and he was 15. Every sport had to be number 15. And, and then when his kids started playing, they had to be 15. When, our nephew was playing, he's like, you're going to be number 15, right? And he's like, I guess so. I guess it's the family number. And then my son starts playing baseball and he's like, you're going to be number 15, right? And he's like, no, I signed up late, so I got the last number, and it was number 5. It's like, that works. That was my number in baseball. He's like, oh, okay. It's just missing the 1. And then the next year he got to choose his number. He's like, you're getting 15, right? He's like, no, I'm going with number 2, after my favorite player, Derek Jeter. He's like, that's my number now. Like, and it like just crushed my brother-in-law that somebody in the family wasn't going with 15. It was funny.
Oh, my son, like he's a good kid. He really is. He's 9 years old and he wants to please his dad, and dad's been his coach his entire time. And when I would ask him, I wanted him to make a decision on his own. I'm like, what number do you want? And now backstory, he was born on Stan Mikita's birthday.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I mean, there's a really cool thing in that, in there with that. I'm like, what number do you want? He's like, I don't know. Can I wear 48? I'm like, don't wear it for me. I don't want you to wear my number for me. Like, I want you to make a number or do something because you feel that it's your personality. I don't need you to be my personality because you're never going to be you're not going to be the player that I was, not meaning quality wise. You're just not going to be the same person. You may be very similar, but you're going to have your own ticks and stuff. And I don't want you to have to I'm not looking for this eulogy to dad kind of thing. So I'm like, how about you were born on Stan Mikita's birthday? How about 21? That is a great role model. Like that is the role model I would want my son to have. Jonathan Taves or Stan Mikita, and you were born on Stan Mikita's birthday. How about 21? He's like, okay, 21 it is. So he picked 21, which I was happier about that than if you would have been wearing my number. I wanted him to pick something because it made sense for him.
Yep. Well, yeah, that was my son. He loves the number 2 because Derek Jeter has a couple of kids' books basically telling his story and he read them and he loved them. And he's like, Derek Jeter's my favorite player. Is like, you realize he retired before you were born. You've never seen him play baseball. He's like, I don't care. He's my favorite player. It's like, all right, cool. So that's his number now, number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be too like overbearing as a parent. It's bad enough that
Right.
like my kid is playing the sport that I've loved for,
Yep.
pretty much 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
I want him to make his own decisions though. He if he wanted to be a goalie, that you can be a goalie. He didn't want to be a goalie, so that's good. I like that. Let
Yeah.
him be
Well,
his own guy.
that was when my son was like, I want to play baseball, not hockey. I was like, cool. He's like, you're not going to be mad. I was like, why would I be mad? And he's like, well, because you played hockey. I said, yeah, I played hockey. You play baseball. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's next summer. We're not going to do summer league hockey. He's going to play baseball. He wants to play baseball. That's
Yeah.
fine. Fine by me.
Yep.
I'm cool with that. He's tried wrestling. He's tried football. Like I played football too, but I never wrestled.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. Like do what you're good at. Don't do what I was good at or what I enjoyed doing. It doesn't like I didn't do what my parents did when they were kids,
Yep.
which is basically nothing. But I didn't like I played hockey because I like playing hockey.
Same here.
You should do the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny because Gus, he tried wrestling. He came home with a flyer from school. He's like, I really want to do this and everything else. And then he tried wrestling and realized he didn't really enjoy it. And he's like, do I have to keep going? Or like, you signed up. You have to do it until the season's over. Then you don't have to. But once you sign up for something, you've made a commitment. And he's like, okay.
That's exactly what my father told me for sports. I couldn't quit. He's like, make sure when you sign up,
Yep.
that you want to commit the entire time, because even if you don't like it, you're not quitting.
Yeah.
And I never quit a season.
Yep. And, it was the same thing. He played flag football before tackle and he liked it, but he likes it more out, at the park with his buddies than he does structured. So he didn't want to do that. And baseball came along. It's like, okay. And he was in Boy Scouts up until this year. COVID really killed the joy of Boy Scouts for him because they went over a year without having an in-person meeting or a camp out. And like camp outs are the whole idea of Boy Scouts. So
right.
Just this next time to sign up, he's like, I don't want you to be mad, but I don't want to stick with it. It's like, okay, I'm not going to make you do something you don't want to do, And he's like, okay,
sure.
good. I was worried. It's like, no, you're good, kid. But you got to find something else to fill your time because you're not just going to sit home playing the show with your buddies from baseball all winter. And he's like, okay,
that's exactly what I told my kid. I'm like, we're gonna take you out and play ball hockey because it was outdoors and stuff. They were letting him do the ball hockey. I'm like, you're gonna go out and you're gonna play ball hockey because you're not sitting in the house eating Cheetos for the next year.
Yeah.
Because I want you physically active. I want you to be out doing something instead of sitting around being lazy and getting fat and unhealthy.
Yeah, totally. So last question, what advice do you have for young goalies?
Well, I would say I don't go along with the fact that, these goalies, they're cookie cutter goalies. Like everyone's going to have your own personality. That would be my first thing to say is you're going to have your own personality. Don't think you have to look like those perfect butterfly goalies.
Yep.
As long as you're athletic enough and you have the right hockey sense and, you could be your own guy. What I really don't like about it is the butterfly goalie factory. Like everyone looks exactly the same. You can't tell anyone apart. I don't like any of that.
Yeah.
But the second thing I would say, let me just get this off and then learn to let goals go. When you give up, because I have a hard time doing this.
Short memory. You
have to forget about it and move on. You have to make the next save. And then you make the next save. Make one save at a time. One save at a time. One save at a time. That's what I always tell the young goalies that I teach.
Yep. Yeah. I had a goalie coach that told us we had to have a short memory and you're only looking to the future until the game ends. Then you can look in the past and figure out what happened. But when the goalies of the 80s and the 90s, you could look at their stance or their play and you could tell who it was. You didn't have to see the number. You didn't have to see the jersey they were wearing. They could just have blacked it out and you could tell by the stance or the way they were playing who it was. Today, not so much.
No, you get, I got nothing against European goalies. They're excellent goalies. They're all really, really good, but you get a Finnish or Swedish goalie in there. That's a butterfly goalie. And it's like, watch him make a save. Tell me who that is. Like a lot of times you're like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing about Marc-Andre Fleury that I love about him is the athleticism and the way he doesn't give up on plays. And you don't see that as much in some of, as you said, the butterfly factory goalies. It's just, this is what I'm supposed to do. If I'm out of position, I'm out of position. It's just not I'm out of position, but what can I do to get in the way of the puck? And
and
that's where
and,
Fleury's old school still.
and to my second favorite goalie of all time, Dominic Hasek.
Yep.
I love that how unconventional he is or was, and he was so good at it, and it was
Yes.
amazing, and it was exciting,
Mm-hmm.
and like that is what I want to do. I want to make saves like Dominic Hasek, stacking the pads and flipping them over, and like with the back of his glove, and like
Yep.
that's playing goalie to me, man. That's
That
what
was,
made me want to be a goalie.
I've always said when people ask what's your style, I said it's kind of a hybrid between Curtis Joseph and Dominic Hasek, because I do the barrel rolls. I've made the saves with the arm behind me. But I saw this week Sense Arena, the virtual reality training tool, now has a program with Dominic Hasek. Is like, okay, now I need to find a couple $100 to get the year subscription just to see what this is all about with Hasek. Yeah, there's the other ones with Tom Barrasso and, some of the other greats of the game, but I want to see what they did with Hasek and what his practice planning is. Just to hear him speak about it, and people would think that he was just out of position, not knowing what the hell was going on. And then you hear him speak, and he was doing that on purpose.
Yeah, he was baiting him.
Yeah,
he was baiting him.
He was baiting him. And I remember one of the conversations he was having is like, well, they're in so close. Why do I have to cover up here? They can't physically get the puck up there. The way it comes off the stick, there's no way it's going to get up there. So get down low, cover as much of it. And it was like, that makes so much sense to me. Now, coaches who don't understand the position, or even some goalie coaches, are like, please do not play that way. I think the goalie coach of its side is more, please don't play that way because I don't have the blood pressure to handle it.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
So, well, we've been going for quite a while. I want to be mindful of time. So where can folks find you on, as you say, the social medias and the interwebs? Where can they find you if they want to follow all of the different podcasts and stuff?
We have our website, which is www.the-rink.com. You could probably see it up right there. That's where I'm going to be writing about Seattle. I'm kind of excited. It's a brand new franchise, new fan base I can get involved with. We have Blackhawks. We have Colorado Avalanche. We will have Colorado. Columbus Blue Jackets at some point in time. But we write there. We just write how we feel. We're not homers. We're not fanboys. We are very critical of these teams. So if you want to go there with a critical mind and read that stuff, please check it out. I'm at Puck and Hostel on the social medias. Also, we have our podcasts that are associated with each one of our divisions. The one I run, I've moved over. We had the Chicago Hockey Rinkcast. You can look that up on all of your favorite podcasts. And we do the video casts now as well. I took over the Seattle one, or I'm creating the Seattle one, which is going to be the Kraken Hostel Seattle Rinkcast. And then we also have our boy Aaron Goldschmidt, who started the Colorado division. He has the Colorado Avalanche Rinkcast. So they're all under the Rinkcast banner. Mm-hmm. They all have a very similar look to them, but it's all different content, different hosts. Sometimes we cross over a little bit just to get a little banter going, but we have a good time. And that's pretty much where all my time is spent during hockey season.
You mentioned that you're not homers, and that's one of the reasons I was drawn to the Hawks Rinkcast, was because it was an honest assessment of the team. When they were sucking, you mentioned it. And, when they were, if there was a player who wasn't living up to his billing, it doesn't matter how great he was in the past, cough, cough, Brent Seabrook, let's point it out. A guy's lost a step. It doesn't mean he's a bad guy, or, his contributions in the past didn't count any. It's like, let's be honest with ourselves. That's one of the things I like about, we can listen to the NBC Hawks podcast all we want, but all they're going to do is say how great they are and have rose-colored glasses. I mean, even their Cubs one right now after a 12-game skid, I think the last one, the title of it was, do we see the light at the end of the tunnel of the rebuild? It's like, it's barely started. Pump the brakes. Let's be honest with ourselves. But you guys are honest. I think I turned to your podcast and the Madhouse podcast just because they're the only two that are critical of the team, you know,
Yeah.
in an honest way.
Yeah. And, you know, it's strange because we're branded as haters because we are so critical of the team. But I mean, if you look at look at the Blackhawks, for example, how bad they've been.
Yeah.
They've not made the playoffs. They've been in the bottom third of the league. Some of the worst defensive teams. Like, we're going to point that out. You want to know why the Blackhawks aren't winning? This is why they aren't winning.
Yep.
You know, it's like, we're not going to go out there and pump up some, you know, goofball, whatever, Stan Bowman's latest, pet project, Alex Nylander or whatever now, because Stan wants him to be put up on a pedestal as the next great, you know, Blackhawk or whatever. Well, no, we're going to show you what's wrong and why they're losing.
Yeah.
We're not going to go out there and just, you know, it's just not the way we think. It's just not.
When they're winning and clicking on all cylinders, you point that out too. You know, what it is, you guys are just honest about what the team's doing.
Yeah, I mean, we enjoyed watching them win Stanley Cups, and it was great. And sure, of course, it was like, you know, it must be nice to be at the top. You know, you're worrying about your seventh defenseman or whatever, Michael Roosevelt being out there.
Yeah, it is nice.
Okay. you kind of got to go. I mean, we pointed out, I covered 3 Stanley Cups pretty much for that team. Like, there were plenty of good times, but when the bad times are bad, you have to point them out. And it's not the fans' fault that, you know, some of these fans are now, you know, becoming adults, and they were 2 years old when the Blackhawks, you know, won the Stanley Cup the first time. They don't know the bad Blackhawks. Right. They don't know what we have seen since 1984. And
they didn't live through the Elpo Suhonen years.
That's a name I always bring up in, like, who should the next coach be? Elpo Suhonen, because I love that name.
Yeah, it's like your coach is named after dog food, and his last job was like running the orchestra in Sweden. You know, it's like, what is going on here?
Every once in a while, I see his name pop up on Twitter somewhere for something, like he's coaching back overseas somewhere. I'm like, you guys still around?
Yeah, crazy. You know who's one guy that I'm surprised didn't pop up more after? It was Craig Hartsburg.
Yeah,
that was a guy
he kind of died. He went up to where was he coaching? He did coach somewhere right after the Hawks, but after that, then it was over with. He wasn't given another chance.
Yeah, you know, I have a feeling that's going to be the route Colleton takes. I see a lot of similarities between the two. You know,
I hope.
Yeah, he's supposed to be great with these young kids, and I haven't seen the progression.
No, I've heard some stories that are not good as far as like Colleton and players not liking him and stuff.
He kind of reminds me of Mike Yeo when he was with the Wild, where he was a great assistant coach, but he's not a great guy in charge.
No, the arrogance that he comes off, like you have not earned this arrogance that you like, because he was, you know, because Stan Bowman propped him up like the golden child. Yeah. That he's the next guy, the young communicator. And he's not that. He's not that at all. And I've heard that players have said that, like, he's one of the worst coaches they've played for. I know one player in particular said it's the worst coach I've ever played for.
Yeah. It's tough as a fan when you see that one of the issues with the team is obvious, but they won't make a change. And I think part of it is Stan's tied to him. If he gets rid of him, he admits that getting rid of Quenneville to replace him with this guy was a mistake.
Oh, the mistakes have been so numerous. The trades, the terrible trades, and all this nonsense that's going on. And now just completely abandoning the rebuild. Yeah. We have to win now because Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane are now mad because you've wasted 6 years of their prime of their career.
Yeah. And
go figure.
They only have 2 years left on their contracts now. So they got to put something together. My gut tells me that once all this investigation's done, Stan might be forced out, and that might be the best thing for the Hawks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't want this to have to be the way that he goes. It should be because of his job performance. Yeah. Because it's so unfortunate that what happened. But yeah, I think like they couldn't let Stan run the draft, run the expansion draft, then run free agency if they thought he was going anywhere anytime soon. And, without them being the decision makers on that. So think they think that he's going to skate on this whole weird thing that's going on.
Yeah.
I hope not, because it doesn't, they should all be gone.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. As we were going back and forth, they said they go, 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes longer. This is one of those, sometimes longer, because we've been having good conversation. But I know you got the family at home. We're encroaching on dinner time, so I'll let you get going, and we're going to keep in touch.
Yeah, that would be great, man. I really had a great time. It's nice to kind of just talk about just hockey in general, rather than just the Blackhawks or Kraken.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Take care.
If you enjoyed my conversation with Jeff, make sure you check out his Rinkcast podcast. As you heard, he isn't a homer by any sorts. He gives his honest opinions of players and teams, giving praise when praise is due and being critical when needed, something many others shy away from. Be sure to follow Jeff on Instagram and Twitter by searching Puck in Hostel. Follow the Rink social medias, as Jeff would say, on the Rink Official on all platforms, and visit their website, the-rink.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simply by searching for Wash Up Goalie, and I'll pop up. Visit washupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights, and of course, all podcast episodes. If you want some Wash Up Goalie or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to visit my merchandise link on my website. If you like this podcast, go listen to the BLPA Big Show. It's the OG BLPA Podcast Network show where a couple of beer league players talk beer league hockey, draft experience shenanigans, and exploits from around the game. The show is hosted by Nick Jones and previous Tendy Talk guest Trish Dangle. Be sure to check out the full lineup of hockey-related podcasts on the Hockey Podcast Network as well. There are too many to list here, but trust me, you're going to be able to find one, if not several, that you enjoy. I need to thank the band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on my podcast. You can download their music on iTunes or listen wherever you stream music from. I'm always working on lining up other goalies to talk to. If you are a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washedupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. And let's not forget, if you're a brand who wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. So until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
It takes a lot of nerve to just get into the rink. Intuition and brains, these are all good things. So look alive.